we need to educate more people. Okay. If we're going to educate more people, we have to be compassionate. We actually have to be understanding that people are coming at trying to attain that degree from lots of different perspectives. And we need to be able to try to support them however we think that we can. And of course, I'm a little biased, but I see it in our faculty, in our staff, and actually I even see it in students.
Welcome to Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast. I'm your host, Will Rucker, and I want to say thank you for joining us again for today's episode. Now, we have had some amazing guests all season long, but I think today is going to absolutely take the cake. This is the cherry on top. We have the president of UNLV with us today, none other than Dr. Keith Whitfield. Hello.
It's very good to be here, Will. Hello, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. The work that you're doing is incredible. The fact that I can see myself in you as the president of the university is incredible. The fact that you're from my hometown of Detroit, Michigan is incredible. It's just so many things. I'm just absolutely thrilled to have you.
Yeah. Well, that Detroit connection is very serious here in Vegas, which I think has added to my feeling so welcome here.
Good. Well, hey, I want to dive right in. And I had the privilege of hearing you speak very recently at the Black Legislative Caucus Awards. And what you said really struck a chord with me about how we solve some of the challenges we face. Everyone had amazing things to say, talking about economics and the different things. But you said a key word, and it's something I believe in, which is community. Could you just share a little bit about how your background and your story brought you to that conclusion?
Yeah. In some ways, it comes from my being, I don't want to oversell this, of being a student of Black life that's happened in our country. And that when we have, risen from the ashes, when we have overcome adversity, we typically did it as a community. We did it as when we supported others. And I think even from actually my experiences in Detroit, that some of the ways in which we were able to improve student success, ways we were able to, I think, improve opportunities for people. Everybody doesn't take them, but you improve opportunities. It came from a community engagement perspective of that university, Wayne State, UNLV, we are part of the community, however we acknowledge it or sometimes don't acknowledge it or get acknowledged and don't get acknowledged, but we're part of the community. And when we see ourselves from that perspective, we can be far more successful. We can be far more impact because you've got more people sitting in the seats that are going to be moving that bus down the road towards success. And so I am very much a believer in community. One of the other pieces, and you got to be careful because I'm a professor at heart, and I can lecture if you give me too many topics. But I'll
understood. You're good.
There's one other point is that my father was in the military, and one of the things that I always found was that when we went on to, if we lived off, when we went on to base, you felt a sense of community because there was that unifying factor that you were serving the country. And to me, it was always, you could see when you went off base, it had a different feel to it. It had that individualistic, you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Whereas in the military, you are part of a greater good that works together in concert with one another. And it's never perfect. It's never uniform. But I can say that was a piece that always influenced me in terms of what I just thought, as humans living on this planet, of how we always do our best. We do our best when we serve as community.
You just made an interesting connection for me. And this is almost a paradoxical connection, which is one of the key American values is individuality. And yet, as a nation, we are the United States. And so there's this tension between personal liberty and civic responsibility. And I really find that fascinating. I think Las Vegas as a community kind of typifies that as well, because we are a community that's a couple million strong, but still very small. And yet 40 plus million people visit us every year. And so we are so global while still being so small. I just really find that fascinating. So thank you for that connection.
Yeah. No, I think that it's a very important insight that you made, is that we do have people who have been successes here. But I tell you, success always has a few pieces to it, a few pieces of that formula. Part of it is persistence. Part of it is that you also have people who usually supported you. You didn't, in my thinking, and it's very much based in education, there's no such thing as a self-made man or woman, that, a self-made person, that we are all influenced by others. And much of that influence oftentimes can be support, and it comes in different forms. I try to make it a habit of making sure when I meet people, I hopefully have something to say that's positive. Like people say, "Oh, you're so positive." I'm like, but I'm not being positive just for the sake of being positive. That person may need to have somebody supporting them, or maybe they don't even, or maybe it's even duplication of what they're having. But you never know what the potential of that person is. So it comes back to your point about, they're individuals, but they come from a community. They came from a family. They came from whatever. And many times that is what helps to make that person. May not be the only thing, but it definitely is a part of the success formula.
Yes. I'm very proud that my family has a strong history of success in education. So my grandmother, her story is incredible. She actually graduated with her master's from Wayne State, but at the age of 50. And so, that was an amazing thing for us to see. My uncle also is a Wayne State graduate. He's now in medicine. I'm trying to get him to Las Vegas. He keeps dragging his heels, but I'm going to get him here eventually. But, most of my cousins all have degrees, and it's just something that our family has been very blessed to do. But I don't say that as a way to try to say, look at us, but it really is to ask this question, which is, how do you differentiate between success and accomplishment? Wow.
Will, you're supposed to be throwing me some soft pitches, man. That is a thinker. And it's funny because the accomplishments usually come from success, but you can have success that doesn't always get acknowledged as an accomplishment. It's one of the things that's the benefit of community. And you started off with talking about family, which, you got me thinking now. I'm thinking, well, maybe I should be talking about family, that we should think about ourselves as a family, because maybe we think about that as a much more constructive, supportive construct. Mm-hmm. But is the idea that that's another piece of community, is that we lift each other up. Actually, when we saw each other just yesterday, it was a chance to be lifting people up that are really making a difference in not just one person, but multiple people's lives. I mean, those people were absolutely incredible who were being honored yesterday. And you can tell they didn't do it for the adulation. They didn't do it for the acknowledgement of it. But that's also why it's important to do, is that people doing good work for others should be acknowledged. We should have that as a value within this community that we're trying to create, so that not only do we recognize those people and thank them for it, but that they serve as models for others. Because if their work goes unshown, demonstrated, displayed, you may not know that you have people that are doing that. So if you want to do it, here's a role model for you to say, this is how you do good. If you want to do good in the neighborhood, if you want to have that as a piece of who you are, or that it's important to have that as a piece of who you are, here's an example of that. So holding up those examples is fantastic. The success piece of it, you got to remember my background's in psychology. And so I picked it apart of it. So what does success mean? Because success can mean something very, very different. I think for me, it's been interesting because people see having achieved the level of presidency as some success. And while I can say there's things that I'm very proud of that I've been able to do, the success seems almost deferred. Like I'm only going to feel successful when I can get 50% of the CCSD kids to come to UNLV and that get a degree and to get that next level of something too that they're passionate about and that benefits them, but also that benefits their family. And so for me, I measure success differently, and it's always, striving, but never arriving. Once I get it done, then I look for the next thing. So I don't sit there and celebrate the successes, but it's nice, the acknowledgement of it as well. Only for me, if I can use it to be able to parlay it into doing something else successful. So it becomes this reoccurring sort of, self-perpetuating sort of theme when you think about those concepts.
And I wanted to say, I think you've had some tremendous successes already. I don't know if the cat's out the bag on a certain, things that you've been doing, but I'm privy to some of the things that are coming down the road and things that past presidents have tried and for whatever reason couldn't get done, but you have already gotten them done. And I work really closely with the School of Public Health. So, thank you for all your support for that school and just the amazing things that are happening out of there. And so the other question I really have been eager to ask is, coming from Wayne State, which was very much a community school, you felt like it was part of the people, and UNLV still has that feel like it feels like it's a neighborhood, which you don't necessarily get in other places. When you said yes to accepting this role, what was the thing that excited you most? And what was the thing you were most fearful, afraid, concerned, any of those words by?
See, man, you're going to make me show too much of who I am, which sometimes is not necessarily the best or smartest of that. And that is that not bragging about it, because sometimes the better form of valor would be, a caution, but I'm just not afraid, in some ways. And so this wasn't someplace to be afraid of. This was someplace to be excited about. There is incredible potential here. That UNLV is a minority serving institution, man. I was just like, when I got the job, that was maybe the first thing that hit me, as such a sense of pride that I would get an opportunity to lead a minority serving institution, that I would get to lead a university that starts to look like Las Vegas. It starts to look like what our country's going to look like, that I would maybe have the opportunity to be able to help Black and brown and the spectrum of color children to be able to reach those educational goals. So I can't even remember your question, but the instant thought that I had at first was that, maybe I just didn't have enough sense to be afraid that, you take them on as challenges. There was, so there's a story that I just shared with a colleague of mine. I just came back from a trip to Baltimore, Maryland, and was visiting Freeman Hrabowski. Freeman Hrabowski, straight out of Alabama, young Black man, got a degree in mathematics. We ain't supposed to be no good at mathematics. Got a degree in mathematics, rose through the ranks, and became the president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. But then went on to take on saying, it's ridiculous to think that African Americans can't do well in STEM fields. So he created the Meyerhoff program with Mr. Meyerhoff, and it has been historically extremely in competition with our HBCUs for producing the most Blacks with PhDs. And he's just an incredible guy. And I just had a visit with him, and I was sharing with him that, if I was just joking. I said, well, now if things go horribly wrong, I'm blaming you, because this is a member of the community who stepped outside of himself when I met him, and he knew about my background, but he didn't know me, and came to me at a time when I was looking for clarity and what my next thing would be, and asked me, when was I going to be a president? And I mean, it made my knees weak. I was like, what? Me? But then I was looking at somebody who looked like me, who was a successful president. And that eased it a little bit, but I was still like, brother, everybody ain't you. This is just little old me. And that belief really helped me to have the confidence to just explore possibilities. And I still didn't even think about being a president. But I had that memory in my mind of that I shouldn't think that I couldn't be. And when we start to open up to ourselves to what we could be, that's what I want to do for the whole community. Somebody was asking me the other day after we had our State of the University address just last week, was saying, because people look like you, do you think that, you're going to do something special for them? Because I said, I hope so. But I hope I help everybody. I haven't got no limits on who I want to help. I want to help anybody and everybody that's going to make our community better, that's going to bring a sense of having kids who may not believe that they can be somebody, to help them be somebody. Because that's what kills me about how sometimes we see our school district here, this large, very complicated school district. There is the next astronaut. There's the next scientist to have a great discovery. They're all out there. And as a member of the community, if me being a person of color, if me being, creating a digital president that you can come and talk to, if there can be anything else that we can do, I'm down for doing it.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And knowing that it's possible, I think opens up so many doors. It doesn't mean everyone has to be a president, but it means that anyone could be. And I think that's the thing that we're aiming at. Not that, there's still some debate around affirmative action and all of the things that are intended to make equity possible. And of course, we're in Black History Month. So why is there a Black History Month? Why is there no White History Month? All of those things in 2022 are still conversations that are being had. But the reality is, for so long, it wasn't even possible to have these conversations and to dream these dreams and to think this was possible. So that's, I think, a key insight that we want to capture.
To add on to what you're saying, there's a statement by the president for Southern New Hampshire University, and I love it because I think it's so true. He says, talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. So communities can help to provide the opportunity, but we have to actually do just what you said, is to help people say everybody doesn't need to be a university president. I like my job. I don't need somebody else, taking my job away. I like my job. But the idea that you've got to think about what could be possible, because you may be talented and no one has given you the opportunity to be able to showcase or to offer your talent. And that's what our university is for. That's what higher ed is for one thing, but that's what we need as a community. We need to make sure that we help talented people be able to achieve the things. Just like you said, everybody doesn't have to be, but if you're passionate about something and you show that you're talented with something, let's not have barriers for you to be able to do that thing. And hopefully it be something that helps others, in addition to being something, for me, I love my job. And one of the things that I do that people find interesting is that I still have a tiny bit of time to do research. And it's because I love doing research. And it's on African-American families. And so it's got its own little personal appeal. So I apologize for interrupting. I just thought your point that you're making is very, very important, which is that let's make sure we don't have barriers to people doing things that are not based on that they don't have talent. Yeah. If they don't have talent, you could see, maybe you can't be successful there. But if you're talented, we need to give people the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. No, that is so rich and such a great way to crystallize the point. where I wanted to go was around some of my personal ambitions, which is a world that works for everyone. And so that, I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit. My grandparents were in City of, but I was,
where in
in Southfield.
Oh, Southfield. I knew it was going to be Southfield. I should have told you. I should have said it before you did, because that's the suburb. Yeah.
But then I went away to school up north in Interlaken, which is right next to Traverse City. So, 6 feet of snow was not a big deal to us because we had things happening up there. But what I've noticed is the thing that has allowed me to feel comfortable anywhere is the fact that I had exposure to everything growing up. So traveling to Europe and to Africa and down the street, my dad made sure that he took me to his clients' homes that lived in the mansions, as well as those where he grew up, which was in the projects of River Rouge. So, he exposed me to the full gamut of human life. And what I've learned is that people just need the opportunity to engage and to get to know one another in order for things to make more sense to them. I want to create a space where people who have different life experiences, different perspectives, even a different outlook can come together, sit at a table, and just talk. Do you think, with your extensive background in community building, do you think that conversation is useful in bridging some of these gaps and minimizing some of the polarization we're seeing today?
Absolutely. And you, especially the point that you just made at the end about the polarization. We have to learn that differences of opinion, differences of perspective have to be able to exist, because we're human beings. Either between communities or even within communities, we're going to have differences of opinion. We have to get back to a point where we allow that to be a piece of what our discourse is, but that it not turn into vilification of that because you think this way, you're this way. People just have differences of opinion. It's always going to be that way. If we can't get over that, we can't do anything. We can't do anything together. It's much, much harder to come together. And that with most things, it's not that everybody has to believe one way. And that we also have to be okay with, if my way is not the way that most people think, I can have my way of thinking about it, but I have to appreciate and understand everybody else thinks this way, so that's the way it's going to be. And we have to be okay with that. That's hard to do. I think we've come down this road where that's hard to do. One of the things that's fascinating is that, and I got to be careful because I know where I'm at. I'm on social media here, but is with social media, we have to be able to use it as a constructive set of conversations, a constructive way that we connect with one another, rather than a way that facilitates our ability to be able to spread hate and discontent. The human condition means that there's going to be some of that in some people. But when we have the kind of opportunity that you mentioned of coming and sitting down together, that's one of the things that we're trying to do, and we need to do more here at UNLV, is we've got this thing called the President's Challenge, where interdisciplinary groups are going to sit down and try to work together to solve a problem. So you put good heads together from different perspectives. That creates better solutions to problems. And it's one of the reasons why, again, great pride in being the part of leadership of a diverse Hispanic serving, Asian Pacific Islander serving institution, because my belief is that the people who get trained here, hopefully we're going to do more and more to integrate them, to let them have their different voices be heard. That's going to make better problem solvers, better thinkers, better folks that are going to work in a world that's a diverse world anyway. So I think that your suggestion is an incredible suggestion. It's one of the things that we're trying to figure out ways that we can do more of here, even during a pandemic when everybody's going to be on lockdown. And not lockdown. We need to be careful. I need to be careful of that because it's still better than what it was. We've come a long way, but is to have opportunities to have those kinds of discussions, discussions where we can talk about things from my perspective and your perspective, and we allow each other to be heard. just makes us, it's going to make us a better planet. It's definitely going to make us a better country, but it's going to make us a better planet.
One of the favorite books I have is called Building Bridges, Not Walls. And it's a communications book from, I think, one of my undergraduate classes, like that long ago, but I still reference it today. And the reason I still look at it is it reminds me of the yes and principle, kind of an improv thing, but they put it as I hear you and, but I like yes. Yes is more concise, get to the point. So, but yes and I hear you, and here's what I have to offer. I think that we have to learn the skill of listening and the skill of self-regulation, because in conversation, there are so many different experiences being brought to the table that sometimes emotion can be heightened and you can feel as if you're in danger from losing something or having to give up something or physical harm if we're being extreme. You are someone that understands the value of mindfulness and meditation and breathing and things of that nature. And I'm so excited to see the School of Medicine and how it's holistic and integrative. And I mean, that's really a revolution. I think we're in a phase shift just for humanity in general. But from the academic perspective, what are some strategies you think we could employ to make mindfulness more accessible to community?
Well, one of the things that, the I is always a we, that we have been supporting, particularly in the midst of this pandemic, is wellness. And we've got some incredible people working on trying to work on wellness and work on kind of, make popular that mind-body connection. We've got our Vice President for Human Resources, Erica Smith, working on things to work on relaxation and mindfulness, and there is mindfulness pieces to it as well. But it's funny because it's something that needs to be taught. It's not something that you just automatically come up with. And I think that that is something that, if we could try to figure out drams of things that will be positives that will come out of the pandemic. I'm hoping that that's one of them, that we learn how to do kind of mental health self-care, and mindfulness being one of those of just like you say, it goes from just reducing stress to being able to actually be a better person in a conversation as well. And, that's not a small thing. I think that's something that's just very, very important. And hopefully that we could all be able to learn. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that everybody will learn. One of the folks here at this university, Annie Wiseman, is working on trying to make it so that we have, I think she runs we have a wellness center. She runs a wellness center, but she's trying to train as many people as she can so that we can spread that technique, that skill, because it becomes a skill. If you can make it a skill, you can integrate it into your life and you can integrate it into daily life. And I do tell the story of that. If you see me walking around and you see me, it's because I'm doing my relaxation training that I've done it with other people. I've done, mindfulness training, and I make sure that I do it myself all the time to try to keep my stress with all the crazy things that go on, in sync. But I notice I do it automatically now. I've done it for so long. I do it automatically. You've got to train people to do it so they can do it automatically, so that they can deal with the stresses of the next pandemic that hits, and when they can deal with the stresses of some of the challenges that come with, changes in work or changes in family and all those kinds of things. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think of all of the mental health challenges, I think that some of our folks are going through, that mindfulness is at the heart of it, for the stress and depression and anxiety, that if you have some of those skills, you can at least combat it, and you can combat it on your own. You don't have to even have somebody outside. You learn this as a skill. It's a skill that actually you can use when it's needed. And so it's nice. It's of a great benefit.
When were you first exposed to that concept, and when did you first begin practicing?
So it's funny. I wasn't always the university president. I wandered around through different things that I was interested in. I actually wanted to be a sports psychologist when I first was in graduate school. And at the time, sports psychology wasn't where it's at now. It was kind of really in its nascence, but I was learning lots about kind of mind-body connections of how the brain influences things and how things in the body in turn influence the brain. And so I was in a biofeedback course. I took it as an elective, took a biofeedback course and learned about different kinds of relaxation techniques. And then went over to the sports psychology folks and learned about guided meditation and worked with, golfers, volleyball players, a discus thrower, all trying in that sports realm to use the power of their mind. Interestingly enough, most of it was to calm and quiet their mind so that their body that they had so highly trained could do what it needed to do without their mind changing what their performance was. And so I could see it work. I could, I saw some successes in folks and then just knew, life is stressful on its own. And two, if I'm going to be better at it, I need to practice it. So I just practiced it, and it's just a part of who I am now. And, I hope that it contributes to my overall health. I know it contributes to my overall mental health, but not only your mental health, but your health as well.
Certainly. I'm excited. I wish I had booked you for 3 hours because there's so much we could do. One of the things that I think we've lost as a culture is trust. And so just looking at you, just knowing your background from the moment they announced you were coming to UNLV, I trusted you. But a lot of that is because of who I am, not necessarily anything to do with who you are. And I give that little disclaimer to say, a lot of people distrust others because of who they are and the way they would handle situations. But with that in mind, what would you say is the key to rebuilding trust in our institutions, those that have doctor as a title, whether it's academic, medical, just an expertise and a subject matter? How can we rebuild that trust in communities?
So again, I thought you were going to give me at least a couple of easy ones. That's.
I've got an easy one at the end. Don't worry.
Well, thank goodness. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to get to them. That has so many different facets to it. It even depends on what the goal or what the topic of the trust that we're trying to actually gain back is. Some of it when it comes to healthcare, it is interesting. It's like you experience that being able to see people who look like us will start that trust, and then hopefully having a good experience then reifies that trust. And so that's important. But in some ways, I think we've got to figure out ways that we can better assess trust beyond just what someone looks like. We've got to be able to use ways to be able to rely on the incredible opportunities, the resources that we have, the technology that we develop to be able to trust it so that we can actually make our lives better. I got a chance just this weekend. It's so funny that you're bringing this up, to see the movie. I want to say it's Henrietta Lacks, and they used her cells, African-American woman in Baltimore, used her cells to be able to understand cancer and lots of other things, but they were able to grow them in medium, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole bunch of science. But it was so interesting because the veil in the background was that there was so much mistrust because there was so many bad things that had happened. But in contrast, then, even through that, there was this good that happened. And it's just tough. I watched it and I was really struggling and thinking about the people that are in my studies, for example, and that we have to answer questions because I do work that actually has to do with genetics. And basically, we haven't had a good history of what people have used information on genetics for. And I have to always, in the research that I've done and that I do, I always have to keep that in mind, that just because I understand all the science of it doesn't mean that that's played out well for other people and how they understand things. Like I can just refute it. I look at some of that stuff and go, that's just dumb. That made no sense. I don't even know why Well, for other people, it has influenced their lives detrimentally. And so you have to take a step back and understand it. But it's a wonderful movie of showing how this woman's, in some ways, a sacrifice that was made, in some ways, that they used a part of her. I guess I don't want to change the topic or the direction, but it's that the acknowledgement, like you said, kind of the acknowledgement in success, the acknowledgement of the contributions that this woman's cells made to science across everything is so gratifying to see that they figured out a way to acknowledge her contribution, that rather than it being hidden. And I think that that's what we have. And we're talking about Black History Month. We have so many contributions that have been made that the average person doesn't know about sometimes. And I don't know enough about everything that's gone on, but every time I learn something, it's something that I take and expands. It makes me look at the world a little bit differently about what African Americans have been able to contribute to science and culture and arts and just humanity in general. But we've got to know more about it. And so that's what I think some of the struggle is.
I really appreciate the way you bring such a well-rounded perspective to every question. And it's something that's a gift. Is obviously well-educated, studied, thoughtful individual, but I think you just have a natural gifting for being able to see multiple perspectives and kind of synthesize a result out of that. That's certainly not easy, but it's so necessary in today's complex, diverse world. And so it makes perfect sense that you've landed in our diverse city where things are never just one thing. It's always multifaceted, multi-layered.
Yeah. And that's what's great about us. And we got to make sure that we embrace that. But to understand that actually that's where our strength is. I think sometimes when we think about, there's all these different faceted pieces, we got to just remember that's where our strength is, as long as we can learn from each other, as long as that we can actually understand and consider us. I come back to the point that you raised when we started this conversation about community, that if we have that piece and we work as a community, it's a strength. If we have that piece and we work as individuals, just another way that we can be different from one another, but it doesn't necessarily add value. We've got to add value in being able to work together and benefit from the lessons that we can learn from each other. So I even appreciate this opportunity to be able to share with, your listeners, your followers, about just a few of the things that I've learned. But I enjoy this because it's all things that you're asking the pointed questions of things that I'm passionate about, that I've learned through both many successes and many more failures, of why that diversity is important, of why it's actually a benefit, of how, I try not to make this too popular, too common. I wasn't always the best student. Now, I was always curious, but I wasn't always the best student. My mother reminds me I wasn't a great test taker. My mother says, oh, remember, but you're not a great test taker, but look, you're a president. I said, yeah, thanks, Mom. Just tell me the president part. Don't tell me the not good test taker. But, hopefully from listening to podcasts like yours, people can find their own truth. People can find their own lessons that they can be able to learn, because there's tons of them out there. You just have to explore.
When you talk about things like community, do you feel heard? And just to back up one step, do you feel like when your mom shares, oh, he wasn't that great of a student all the time, do you think that opens up doors for others to hear you that wouldn't ordinarily do so?
I hope so. Because, mine is one, again, of that kid in school that if you look at him, were you going to say that kid's going to be the president of a university? Did you say that kid is going to be, get a PhD, and have success? And I don't think they would have predicted it. Mm-hmm. And, that may be part of what drives me to say, I want to help all of those people. If you're a little kid, if you're an adult, but if you have a passion, because my success has been driven by passion. Mine wasn't driven necessarily by the talents that I started with, but I figured out a way to get them. And if you at least have, for me, it was the persistence of knowing if I worked hard enough. That's what my parents always taught me. The Detroit My parents were from Chicago, and I think there's that Midwestern, you just put your head down, you work really hard. And if you work really hard to obtain it, you can have lots of success. But it wasn't about whether you were you're going to be the smartest kid in the room. Nah, just be the hardest working kid in the room. That's who I was. I just worked really, really hard. And I think for a lot of our folks that feel disenfranchised or who haven't attained what they want to attain yet, it's that you gotta just double your efforts. You got to put people around you too, hopefully create your own community that can be supportive of you rather than creating a community around you that tears you down. So, we never get any of that. Oh, Black folks never get none of that stuff. What if we do? And how can we, rather than, the yes, like you were saying, rather than the I can't. Mm-hmm. It's a different conversation. It's very powerful.
Well, this is the Compassionate Las Vegas podcast. So I have to ask you this question. How do you define compassion?
That's I'm thinking of several ways. One of the ways I think is making sure you take a moment. It's the age-old biblical thing. Walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. To just, when you hear something, when someone says something, when you think of something, when somebody makes an action, take a second and make sure that you check yourself first and make sure that you're in the right space to be able to evaluate that person. That's the compassion, is to be able to say, I'm going to make sure that I'm right first. And then I'm going to evaluate. Then I'm going to think about what you did. Then I'm going to make sure that I judge whatever action I feel I need to take based on understanding where you may be at first. And then, so it's not so much about me. It's about you. It's about us. And that's what, compassion, I think in a simplistic way means to me.
I like that. I think that's a great way to frame it. Is there a place for compassion at your university? And I don't necessarily mean just with you, because I know that's a value of yours, but in the education sector, in the education system, is there a place for compassion?
There's not only a place for it. If we need to educate more people. Okay. If we're going to educate more people, we have to be compassionate. We actually have to be understanding that people are coming at trying to attain that degree from lots of different perspectives. And we need to be able to try to support them however we think that we can. And of course, I'm a little biased, but I see it in our faculty, in our staff, and actually I even see it in students. I see examples all the time of people being compassionate. Somebody is walking across campus and you can see they're lost. From a distance, I can see they're lost. And seeing a student, engage them and say, it's this way or that way on this giant campus that we have, that they put themselves out there, that people even feel that somebody is open to being able to help them, that compassion is there. I hope people feel that, even though we're a big university, that the folks are there. We have staff people that I've got this one woman, I'm gonna call her out too, Stephanie, and I'll just say her first name, I don't want to get her in trouble. But students will write and have an issue, and I'm just the president. I don't know where all the levers are. I asked Stephanie, can you help me with this? She gets on it every single time. She finds a solution. And in the times when she can't find a solution, she finds a compassionate way to try to move that person into, here's maybe the next action you need to make, because this ain't working, but here are the opportunities for you. Here are the things for you. So that compassion is there. It may look different. It may not always feel like you're getting exactly what you need, but we are a compassionate university. We want our students to graduate. We want them to be better, because we know once they're better, they make our state better. They make our city better. And actually, a lot of our students, they make the world better. So we know that, we understand that. And that is, I think, a value that we carry as a university. Everybody in it's not perfect. Everybody in it doesn't say the perfect, nice thing every second of every day. But as a general philosophy of a university, it's one of the things that makes me very proud to be at this university, is that I think that it is a very compassionate university in many different ways.
Hearing that, I have all kind of ideas in my head. I'm going to put together some sort of certificate or something. But we'll talk about it after the interview is over. I can attest we have listeners from all over the world, so not everyone has visited the campus, but I can personally attest it's big. And I have been lost more than once, but people have been so kind. And I've even had, I don't know exactly what department they're from, but they have these little carts that you're driving around in, and they're like, here, let me help you. And it's just amazing. And the students are also so helpful. Yeah. And I still consider myself a young person. So I feel like I'm college age, but on the campus, I really am, because it is such a diversity, not just between ethnic groups or races, but in age. So it's really a place that just feels like home, even if you're not enrolled for classes. So I think that spirit shines through.
Yeah, we have as our goal, it's one of our missions, of access. And access means a lot of things. It just doesn't mean just because of your financial capability. It's also of any age that you have to do lifelong learning. I mean, if you take a look at your phone from one version to the next version, you got to learn something. So lifelong learning is not an ideology. It's a reality that everybody has to deal with. So we take a lifelong learning perspective. So that means anybody should have access to a great university. That's what we believe. That's what our goal is to have access to, faculty who are these incredible minds who can share perspectives and thoughts and knowledge and information, so that people can be able to consume that and be able to do whatever they are going to do with it, hopefully be able to find ways to make their life better, make their families' lives better. But I was thinking about the cart thing. And we have a lot of carts. And I tell you, when it gets to be 115 degrees in Vegas, I'm so happy for my cart. But, I had the experience last year in the fall when we came back for the first time, more in person than we were remote of that. So, I get in my car and usually somebody's trying to drive me around because I get lost here occasionally. But I know, a few places to go to. So I hopped in my cart. And it was maybe the second day of school. And there were people that were just moving down our main thoroughfare. And they saw me in a cart. This guy saw me in a cart and he said, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me? Do you know where this building is?" And I looked left and I looked right and I said, "No, but I know somebody who does." I said, "Get in a cart." So we get in a cart. We drive around. We go over to one of the Ask Me desks. And I was able to help him, but he never asked who I was. And I was like, even better, because you don't get all of the whatever. So I drop him off. I leave him in good hands. I start moving across. And I think this young woman must have seen that he got a ride. So she's hobbling a little bit. And she says, excuse me, I'm trying to get over to the so-and-so building. Can you give me a ride? And I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm not a taxi.
Right.
But I'm like, what the heck? I got an extra few minutes. I said, hop on in. So again, I said, what happened to your foot? And, I'm almost in parent mode. I'm like, what are you majoring in? And, how is school going so far? And we're talking. And I thought about it and I was like, you just hopped in this cart. I said, you don't even know who I am. And she kind of looked at me like, yeah, that's kind of a good question. And she said, well, who are you? I said, I'm the president of the university. And she almost fell out the cart. I said, look, you just need to make sure you ask who you get in the cart with. And she was almost apologetic. And I was like, no, see, that's the compassion. This is a compassionate university. That's part of the many descriptions of my job that I felt was part of my job, was that I carted her over to the student center and made sure that she was off and on her way. But you see things like that happen all the time. I think you see, and part of it is that because we come from a community, there's people that are hearing this that are not in Vegas. And so they have a certain idea about Vegas, but Vegas is actually a very friendly place. It has lots of other different dimensions to it, but Las Vegans are actually very friendly people. And we reflect that on our campus because our folks come from the community. About 70% of our students are from this local area. We get people that are from out of state, out of country, but that's part of the reason why I think we do have this compassion thing, is that we have good people coming from a good place. And, when we get a chance to be together, the pandemic has limited that in many ways, but we get a chance to do that. And I think we show it off pretty good.
I absolutely agree. In our last few minutes together, I want to know what you are listening to. What's on your playlist? What type of music is making you move and groove? To give you a simpler, easier question, what song would you say is exemplifying your experience of Las Vegas and UNLV?
See, Will, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been afraid that somebody was going to ask me that. I was even thinking, I should just put it out there and show it so that somebody doesn't catch you when you're driving down and you got the window down, that you're thumping your beats and whatever. But there's a few, and I'm afraid to say them, because if there's some objectification in them or something like that, I'm afraid of what those words might be. But one of them that I like, good or bad, is I'm Different by 2 Chainz. Because I take that as, that's kind of who I am. I also like Smile, Live My Best Life, because I like to think about that as a thing. And then the one that I listen to, it is on my morning playlist on Alexa, is Humble by Kendrick Lamar. So, take it for what it is. Those are some of the tunes that you will hear as you see me jetting here or jetting there.
I love it. And I don't know those tunes. I think I know the Live My Best Life one, at least the chorus part, but I'll have to listen to them. So
I don't know what you're listening to, man. Listen to the Kendrick Lamar Humble piece, because it's one of checking yourself. And I always believe that that's important, of saying, he has another one that's called about DNA, and it's about being a good person, and that it's got to be something that's built in you, like your DNA is built in you, about, you can be a hustler or whatever, those things, sometimes we think of being born within us, but also talks about being a good person. And that's just who I am. That's in my DNA. The humble one is that, check yourself, don't go off spouting and being nasty and doing all that other stuff. Sit yourself down, be humble. That's part of the chorus is, sit down, be humble. It's an important lesson to learn.
Beautiful. Well, you have given us so much in this time together. So thank you again for joining the Compassionate Las Vegas podcast. In a sentence or two, what do you want our listeners and our viewers to take away from this conversation today?
Well, for one thing, I hope that they listen to you regularly, because what you're trying to do is to showcase and highlight the best of people. And that's what we need probably more now than ever before. So I hope that you take from it. I like to try to consider myself as a servant leader, that what I do, I like to do for others. And that is my goal. That is my mission. That gets me hyped. That makes me feel better when I can try to help others. And I hope that they got that from our conversation today. And again, I hope that they follow you religiously, vigorously, to be able to learn those lessons and to be able to have their perspective, their minds right, and to live that best life that they want to live.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for your time and for your spirit and your generosity to our community. This has been Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast. I am Will Rucker. And as I always remind you, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop, and what you do matters. So live compassionately.